Welcome to The Explainer, where we turn research into understanding. All right, let's just get right into it. Have you ever noticed how some new piece of tech becomes like absolutely essential to your life, while another one just fizzles out, ends up in the digital graveyard? Well, today, we're going to unpack the psychology behind why that happens.
I mean, seriously, think about it. Organizations spend billions of dollars on brand new systems, totally convinced they're going to change everything. And then, what happens? So often, these brilliant, super expensive tools are met with, like, a collective shrug. They just gather digital dust while we all just stick to the old way of doing things. So, what is going on here?
Well, it turns out, to really understand why, you can't just look at the code or the shiny new features. The core of the problem, it isn't the technology. It's us. Yeah, really. The real battle for whether a technology gets adopted is fought right inside the user's mind. And our story here really kicks off with a totally groundbreaking study from back in 1989 that first started to crack this code.
Okay, so let's dive into these two big reasons. Back in '89, a researcher named Fred Davis came up with this really powerful model to predict how we use technology. He basically argued that it all boils down to two simple things.
So the first one is what he called perceived usefulness, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Our brain almost subconsciously asks a super simple question. Is this thing actually going to help me do my job better? You know, better performance can lead to raises, promotions, just plain old recognition. So if a tool promises to boost our performance, we're going to see it as useful. Simple as that.
And the second big question we ask is just as important. Okay, but is learning and using this thing going to be a total pain? Let's be real. We all have a finite amount of energy and brain power to spend in a day. So if a tool seems really complicated or clunky, we start to think the effort it takes might just not be worth the payoff. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. When Davis actually tested these ideas, he found that, yeah, both of these things mattered. But one was way more important. Perceived usefulness, that will this help me question, was a much stronger predictor of whether somebody would actually use a new system. It wasn't even close.
And that leads to this crucial point. I mean, you can design the most beautiful, elegant, simple-to-use system in the entire world, but if it doesn't solve a real problem for the user, if it isn't fundamentally useful, it's going to fail. Period. Usefulness is king.
So if we agree that usefulness is king, that just leads to the next big question, right? What exactly makes us feel like a piece of tech is useful? Let's peel back another layer of this onion.
So yeah, if usefulness is so critical, what is it that creates that feeling, that perception in our minds? To figure that out, we're going to jump ahead to a follow-up study from the year 2000. This is where researchers expanded that original idea into something even richer, called TAM2, and it revealed these hidden forces that shape how useful we think something is.
See, what the researchers found was that our sense of a technology's usefulness, it doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's actually shaped pretty heavily by two totally distinct sets of forces: the social world all around us and the cold, hard, practical realities of our job.
And this illustrates it perfectly. We're basically living in two different worlds at work, aren't we? On one hand, you've got the social stuff. What does my boss think? What are my coworkers using? How does using this make me look? But on the other side, you've got this cognitive, practical world. How well does this actually fit into my daily tasks? Are the results any good? Both of these worlds are constantly shaping what we decide is useful.
So let's break that down. What's really going on in our heads? Well, there's that social influence part. My boss thinks this is important and all the top performers are on it. Using it will probably make me look good. That's what researchers call subjective norm and image. But at the exact same time, there's this more practical part of our brain firing off questions like, is this even relevant to what I do every day? Will the work it spits out actually be high quality? And maybe most importantly, will I be able to show everyone that it's making a difference? But here's the biggest insight. These factors don't just, add up like a simple checklist. The research found this really powerful interaction between them. Just think about it for a second. If a new piece of software is only sorta relevant to your job, you probably don't care that much if its reports are just okay, right? But what if that software is the absolute core of what you do all day? All of a sudden, its output quality becomes incredibly, critically important to you.
Okay, but hold on.
there is one more major twist to this whole story. It turns out our reasons for adopting technology, they're not set in stone. The things that convince us to start using a system aren't necessarily the same things that make us keep using it, for the long haul.
See, that big TAM2 study was longitudinal. What that means is they tracked users at different points in time, right after they were trained, then again a month later, and then 3 months later. And doing it this way revealed this really fascinating shift in what was actually motivating people over time.
And here is the big reveal. Check this out. In a mandatory setting, where your boss says you have to use this, social pressure is huge right at the beginning. We use it because we have to, but look at what happens over time. That social pressure, the what will my boss think part, it just fades away. And what's left? Only our own personal experience. Does it work for me? Is it useful to me? In voluntary settings, it's about that personal belief from day one. The lesson here is so clear. Social proof might get people in the door, but it's personal usefulness that makes them stay.
All right, so after this whole journey through more than a decade of research, what's the blueprint? How do we get tech adoption right today and, avoid that digital graveyard we talked about?
Well, it really all comes together in this 5-part blueprint. And the foundation is pretty straightforward. Start by building something that's fundamentally relevant to the actual job. And make sure it does that job exceptionally well. From there, you have to make the benefits, the results, so obvious that they're just undeniable. Now, you can use social proof, get some key people on board to get things started, but don't count on that lasting forever. And weaving through all of this is ease of use. That's the gateway. It's what allows users to even experience that core usefulness in the first place. And the power of thinking this way is, honestly, it's pretty remarkable. These factors, the social pressure, the job fit, the quality, the visibility of results, they aren't just, abstract theories. When you put them all together, they can predict up to 60% of why a user will find a new technology useful. That is huge. It's the difference between just hoping people use your new tool and actually understanding the levers you can pull to drive their choice.
And that really just leaves us with a final thought. The next time you find yourself getting excited about a new app or a new piece of software at work, just take a second and ask yourself this question. Is it really, truly useful, or are you just kind of following the crowd? It's a question that reveals the powerful and often invisible forces that are shaping our decisions every single day.